Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Burst City, a Japanese dystopian punk rock musical action film, I guess you could say, from 1982 that was directed by Sogo Ishii. Now, I've covered this director a handful of times already. I have separate video reviews of Angel Dust, Electric Dragon 80,000 Volts, Gojo, August in the Water, and Labyrinth of Dreams on this channel. So now it's time to discuss one of his earlier feature-length projects, Burst City, which is a very influential film that inspired a number of contemporary Japanese directors. But just because a movie is influential does not mean that it's necessarily entertaining in its own right. At least that's how I approach things. So let's take a look at this. Now, the following description and plot is from the Arrow Video Blu Ray release. Burst City is an explosive Molotov cocktail of dystopian sci-fi, Mad Max-style biker wars against yakuza gangsters and police, and riotous performances from members of real-life Japanese punk bands. In a derelict industrial wasteland somewhere on the outskirts of Tokyo, two rival punk bands and their unruly mobs of fans gather for a battle of the band-style protest against the construction of a nuclear power plant, bringing them head-to-head with the yakuza industrialists behind the development of their turf. So the first time I saw Burst City back in the day, I was not the biggest fan of it, alright? I mean, yeah, we'd get bands, riot cops, criminals, and lots of punk rock music, but that's basically the entire film, alright? And because of that, I had some trouble engaging with it, because I was expecting more traditional character and story development, perhaps some choreographed action sequences or chases. We barely get any of that stuff. The conflict is developed a tiny bit during the second half, and we get a few brief shots of cars driving fast, as well as a big riot scene near the end of the film, but they're not really action sequences per se. Bottom line, you will need to go into this film expecting an experience, not a strong story or characters or action. Also, a bunch of the people who appear in the movie were taken directly from the punk rock scene, meaning that there's some raw acting, I guess you could say, that's on display. Now, with all of that said, I do enjoy this movie nowadays. I've seen it, I think, 3 times now, and my repeat viewings have been much more enjoyable. I think repeat viewings were more entertaining because I knew what I was getting into at that point. So I stopped expecting certain things that the film doesn't bother to focus on, and I simply accepted the film for what it's actually trying to do. Now, Burst City still could have failed, alright, especially if the pacing was bad, or if it got too obnoxious, or if it was directed poorly, or if the production design was terrible, or any other types of things. But thankfully, it is successful at doing all of these things. You know, pacing is brisk, direction is solid, and production design is interesting. The music is good. Visuals are engaging. I like the nighttime scenes especially. Like the opening shot is a time-lapse video of a vehicle driving on roads. So it looks like it's going at light speed down the roads of Japan, right? Which is a pretty cool visual to start the film with. We have some documentary-style shots that are mixed in with the more cinematic stuff. The camera moves a lot, and the editing is on the tight side. And all of this creates a very energetic presentation. And I found myself being very engaged with the film because of that. Now, you definitely get a good feel for the punk rock scene in the 1980s, the clothing, the music, the energy, etc. Some nice use of color, as I alluded to. I'm a big fan of atmospheric colors at night. We get some of that here. We get some blues, reds, and pinks sprinkled in. And the environments are they're heavily weighted toward decrepit industrial locations. You know, it's kind of like a rusty, low-technology cyberpunk feel. Very specific vibe to it. You know, some sci-fi type stuff, it's real pristine and clean. This is very lived in and grungy. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's almost post-apocalyptic, really, is what it feels like. So there's some good stuff in Burst City. Now, you know, if someone were to watch this film and they were to tell me that they did not like it, or if they told me that it's basically just a feature-length music video that has no legitimate depth, I could totally understand that opinion. That was basically my opinion the first time I saw the film. And in some ways, It's still my opinion, even though I enjoy it now. But I've appreciated the other aspects of the film more nowadays compared to the first viewing. So I just want to make sure you know what you're getting into for this. I know some critics and people hail this film up as like a masterpiece or something. It's not one of my favorite Japanese films of all time. But it's just an engaging film that's a little bit different. Maybe watch the trailer or something if you could find one on YouTube to get a good feel of it. But I hope I gave you enough information to tell whether or not you're going to be interested in something like this. So I do recommend it for a particular kind of viewer. It's currently available streaming on YouTube and Amazon. It's also available on a Region B Blu Ray. And I did listen to the Tom Mess commentary on that Blu Ray, and it's very good, very informative. So, again, this one I think is a little bit more risky for the average viewer. But, hey, if you feel adventurous, give it a shot. And as always, I will see you next time.